Today we're going to dive into the science of ice crystals when it comes to freeze drying, and how pre-freezing your food prior to freeze drying will give you a better quality of food, better texture, and also how it will save you money. So right here I got some milk, and to make it a little bit easier so the ice crystals will show up on the camera, I'm going to color this milk green. And I chose green because it will pair well with my green eggs and ham I'm going to be having later on this morning. That's a joke. So I got my green milk, and we're going to measure out in these little ramekins here 100 grams or 100 milliliters of green milk. So I have these two ramekins of green milk. Each one has 100 milligrams or 100 milliliters of milk. This one we're going to put into the Harvest Right freeze dryer and start the freezing cycle on it. This one I'm going to put into my freezer, which is already running and is down at 0 degrees. What's going to happen, and what our hypothesis is going to be, is this is going to freeze faster than the Harvest Right freezer, and because it will freeze faster, the ice crystals are going to be smaller. And that's important, that when you freeze food and the food and the fiber within the food freezes and ice crystals develop, the ice crystals have a tendency, if they become large, to tear the tissue of the food apart. And if I can give you a quick little story, when I was much younger, I worked at the Northridge Kmart. Now, some of you younger people may not even know what a Kmart is nowadays, but I worked in the sporting goods section at the Northridge Kmart in California. And I thought, in preparation to go to work, so I wouldn't have to spend a lot of time in my apartment, I would pre-make sandwiches for the entire week. So I went out, bought some bread, bought some deli meat, bought some tomatoes, lettuce, everything to make a really good sandwich. And I made 5 sandwiches, wrapped them up, stuck them in the freezer. Well, when I got to work and the sandwiches finally thawed out, that was a horrible tasting sandwich because the tomato and the lettuce froze and developed large ice crystals because they froze slowly. And if you haven't ever tried to taste lettuce or tomatoes or other leafy vegetables that have been frozen, the texture and the quality is very low. So that's kind of has something to do with this little experiment. And just one other little note, my claim to fame from working at the Northridge Kmart is that I sold .357 ammo to Donald Sutherland. That's a whole nother era. So we're going to go ahead and freeze these, and once they're frozen solid, we're going to measure the ice crystal structure. These are the 2 samples of milk that I pulled out of the Harvest Right freeze dryer and my freezer. And the first thing you'll notice is that the one from the freeze dryer has kind of a creamy color green to it, where the one out of my freezer is a darker green, and you can kind of see crystal structures through the surface. So we're going to go ahead and pop these out, and then we're going to snap them in 2 and take some high resolution pictures of the crystal structure. This is the frozen milk from the freeze dryer, and we're going to go ahead and snap this in 2, and it will snap and break on the structure of the crystals. So we're going to take some pictures here. And this is the frozen milk from my freezer. So we're going to go ahead and analyze the crystal structure You see which ice crystals are smaller or larger. So if you take a look at sample number 1 compared to number 2, this sample was the one frozen in the Harvest Right freeze dryer. This was frozen in my freezer set at 0 degrees. And you can see this large ice crystals up here, where the ice crystals down here are much smaller. I thought what would be interesting, instead of me analyzing the structure, how about if I have ChatGPT do it? So this is a question I posed to ChatGPT. Please review the attached pictures. Which picture has smaller ice crystals? And this is the answer ChatGPT gave. It said, from the image provided, picture 1, top, seems to show larger ice crystals. You can observe more defined and elongated structures, which suggest slower freezing. And picture 2, the bottom, shows smaller ice crystals as the structure appears more compact and uniform, like resulting from fast freezing. And ChatGPT says this aligns with the general principles that slower freezing forms larger ice crystals, while faster freezing results in smaller ones. So I thought I'd ask the second question up here. What does this do to the quality of freeze-dried food? And the reply, the size of the ice crystals directly impacts the quality of freeze-dried foods in the following ways. Larger crystals can damage the cellular structure of the food, causing it to become mushy or lose its texture after rehydration. It says large ice crystals take longer to sublimate during the freeze-drying process, which can extend drying time and lead to uneven drying if not controlled properly. So there's another cost savings right there. The food may lose its shape or show cracks due to the disruption caused by large ice crystals. Then ChatGPT continues on small ice crystals. It says smaller crystals are gentler on the food's cellular structure, preserving the texture and appearance more efficiently. Drying efficiency, small crystals sublimate more evenly and quickly, improving the efficiency of the freeze-drying process. And on quality, foods freeze-dried with smaller ice crystals often have better structure, flavor retention when rehydrated. In summary, smaller ice crystals typically lead to higher quality freeze-dried food with better texture, appearance, and rehydration properties, which is why rapid freezing is often preferred before freeze drying. So there you have it. So what does all this mean? Well, you'll save electricity from quicker batches, which is going to be money in your pocket. Pre-freezing is just a faster way to freeze dry. Also, there's going to be less wear and tear on your freeze dryer, which also can lead to money. Your compressor and your freeze dryer won't wear out as fast and will stay in better condition because you're shortening the freeze dryer cycle. First step in pre-freezing your food, of course, is pre-freezing. Now I have this little rack I welded up, and it's a simple rack made out of 1/2 inch by 1/8 inch flat bar, and the supports on the sides are straddling the supports for the shelves. Now, if you can't weld something up, that's fine, but what you can do is get yourself some boxes, something like what I have now. These boxes are just basically to hold the different types of food. This is beef, this is chicken. But if you put some boxes in here and open up the fronts and have the tops up above, you can lay either your trays directly on the box, or you can maybe put a piece of wood across there, something where you can put your trays in if you have an upright freezer like I have. So the first thing you want to do is go ahead and put your trays in the freezer and pre-freeze them. I keep my trays in the freezer for at least 24 hours. Now the arrangement I have would actually hold 5 trays. I don't have a 5-tray freeze dryer. I only have a 4-tray freeze dryer. So once your food is in here, there's another benefit, is pre-freezing in the freezer will start to sublimate your food. And you can lose up to 5 to 6% of your water in the freezer before it even goes into the freeze dryer. So that's one other benefit of pre-freezing your food. Step 2 is to pre-freeze your freeze dryer. It doesn't matter what brand of freeze dryer you have, they should all pre-freeze the same. So I'm going to go ahead and show you some of the options in the menu that can vary your freezing ability for your freeze dryer. We're going to go up here to the Harvest Right menu. Now, depending on what kind of machine you have,
it may be a little bit different, but we're working on a Harvest Right. So we're going to hit custom, and this will bring up my initial settings. So on initial freeze, I set this to 0 degrees because I know that from pre-freezing, my food is going to be rock hard. There's really not a reason to have this any higher than 0 if you know your food is frozen. Now, if you're going to be freeze drying with foods high in oils, sugars, or salts, you might want to increase this just a little bit, because those types of foods are a little bit harder to freeze because oil, salts, and sugars kind of act as an antifreeze. So I have mine set at 0. Extra freeze time, once again, I know my food is rock hard frozen, so I'm going to leave that at 0. Now I always leave my dry temperature at 130. That's just the ideal setting I like. And extra dry time I always leave at 12 hours in case my batch finishes during the night while I'm asleep or if I'm away to work. So those are my favorite settings. I'm going to go ahead and hit save and get out. You want to cool down your freeze dryer, so we're going to go ahead and hit start. And that will start the menu. Now on this particular menu, it says wait 15 minutes before loading trays. Well, I'm not waiting 15 minutes. I'm going to wait 50 minutes. Now, on my particular freeze dryer, I know that in 50 minutes, my freeze dryer will get down to the teens. You might have to time your own freeze dryer to see how quick you can get down to the teens. With mine, it's 50 minutes. And so once I hit the start button, I will start the timer for 50 minutes. Now, there's something else I do. Now I'm on 5.0.24. I've found that that version is the best by far that Harvest Right has come out with. I like that version above all others. If you have a higher version of software, this next step you may not be able to take, but that's okay. So once again, I'm going to hit start. And once this screen comes up on my screen, I'm going to go ahead and hit the leaf here. And that will allow me just to bump my menu one ahead, and I'm going to hit continue. Now on some of the newer software versions, after the one I have, this icon has been deactivated for what I'm doing. So you may not be able to push your freeze dryer one step ahead. I'd only do it at this stage. I'd never push it at any other stage. Once I'm at this freezing stage, my timer is set for 50 minutes, and I'm just going to wait till it goes off, and then I'm going to load my trays directly from the freezer into the freeze dryer. If you have one of the newer versions of the Harvest Right freeze dryer and you can't move ahead, then just hit start and just go ahead and let this count down for the 15 minutes. Come back to your freeze dryer and go ahead and toggle the switch to go into the freezing mode.
Once your freeze dryer gets down teens, or your timer goes off, or whatever the case might be, it's been 50 minutes, so my freeze dryer is ready to go. So we're going to go ahead and open everything up and put it in the trays. If you're wondering about why I have aluminum foil around my tray shelf, well, that's a whole nother video, and I'll put a link at the end of this video. So everything is loaded in my freeze dryer. I'm going to go ahead and secure the door, shut my valve, and because these trays are so cold already, this will actually help your freeze dryer go to 0 pretty quick. And once it hits 0, the freeze dryer will go into action. So it's that simple, easy peasy. This process of pre-freezing your food and coming up with smaller ice crystals will make your food taste better, have a better texture, better quality when it's rehydrated. So I hope you learned something new. I'd like to thank you for your support. Please give me a like and please subscribe. And I will make another video for you soon. And as always, go forth and freeze dry the world.